Antes da peste, a fome era comum. Embora cada centímetro da terra fosse semeada, o suprimento nunca alcançava a demanda crescente. Agora, mesmo com muita terra sem cultivo, havia comida de sobra. Pela primeira vez em séculos, fazendeiros podiam cultivar não somente grãos, e assim a Itália tornou-se um país rico em azeite de oliva e frutas aromáticas.
Francesco, vieni giù ad aiutare! Non posso fare tutto da solo.
Sì, papà.
Os pomares da Itália comprovam uma verdade dolorosa. Uma queda súbita na população tem suas vantagens.
As people died, wages rose. And as people died and lands were vacated, people who in the past were relatively poor could afford to begin to invest in land.
And what that meant was that all of a sudden people who had been peasants were now what we might call kulak class. They were now landowners. They had decent-sized farms and they could actually live independent lives rather than working the fields of others.
One of the interesting things is to look at the diet. Their diet, which is almost strictly grain-fed diet, ale, bread pudding, bread, now has quite a bit of meat in it, has some vegetables in it.
La cena è pronta!
Andiamo, figli.
Mas à medida em que a fortuna dos camponeses crescia, a das classes dominantes despencava. Por séculos, os nobres haviam dependido de servos para trabalhar nos feudos. Agora, com empregos melhores atraindo os camponeses, os nobres foram deixados sem mão de obra. Um clérigo descreveu com bom humor a decadência dos poderosos.
Prelados, cavaleiros e outros nobres foram forçados a debulhar grãos, arar a terra e fazer tudo o que não estão acostumados se não quiserem morrer de fome.
Ma che stai facendo? Ma come la stai usando quella zappa?
Marito mio, giuro che te la faccio mangiare questa
Ma guarda
pala.
come stai zappando, se la usassi bene non staremo qua tutto il giorno.
Muitos nobres empobrecidos recusaram-se a se rebaixar trabalhando no campo. Em vez disso, buscaram sua fortuna à moda antiga, com a espada.
We have a lot of military types running around. Sometimes they're employed by France or England or Spain or Catalonia or someone, in which case they're drawing a salary and looting cities for pay. Sometimes they're unemployed and they're looting cities to feed themselves.
Para compensar o tamanho diminuído de seus exércitos, cavaleiros criaram novas regras para um velho jogo. Nascia a Guerra de Guerrilhas.
Have all these demilitarized men roaming the land, looking for opportunities to pillage. And that's really where things like scalping, for example, come from. It was the terror tactics of these groups of military men seeking to extort from villagers and from city folk.
As repercussões de uma mão de obra reduzida geraram a busca pelas atividades mais pacíficas do comércio e da indústria.
Simply, the destruction of so many people forced the survivors to come up with labor-saving devices such as the printing press.
Industries that used to rely heavily on surplus manual labor, like the cloth industry, which used to be able to count on lots of dislocated peasants who didn't have land because there were so many people and the land was fixed, they can't rely on that labor. So they start to turn to other kinds of solutions, technological solutions, like mills.
Menos de um século após a Peste Negra, os manuscritos com iluminuras da Idade Média tornaram-se relíquias. A imprensa, criada por Gutenberg, aposentou-as.
All the industries that we really associate with later processes of industrialization start to emerge in the late 14th century, and you could argue that they emerge partly as a response to the labor crisis precipitated by the plague.
O maior impacto da peste, porém, não foi nos campos de batalha ou nas fábricas, e sim no coração humano.
I can't even imagine the anguish that would have occurred from a parent or a child watching a parent get sick. Take young people who may have seen their parents die, surviving in the 1350s, but with that memory of death all around them, so that death became a common sight.
I think there is lots of evidence that there was a psychological transformation affected by the plague and by the sudden dramatic disappearance of so many people.
A morte pairava na imaginação de todos como uma sombra ameaçadora, gerando a arte medieval conhecida como dança macabra.
The kind of Dutch paintings you see with skeletons dancing and with a kind of memento mori, just remember death. Death is everywhere.
Com o tempo, a sublevação social dos anos pós-peste, os questionamentos e o individualismo originou o maior florescimento cultural da história europeia: a Renascença. A Renascença na Itália demonstra a extraordinária resistência da sociedade humana, cuja tenacidade e energia criativa sustentaram-na durante os anos mais negros da peste.
It was as if Europe had suddenly switched off and then back on again. And the Black Death had done that.
Hoje, muitos cientistas se perguntam como a sociedade moderna reagiria perante um cataclismo similar. Pois micróbios assassinos ainda existem em regiões remotas, aguardando um hospedeiro para trazê-los aos nossos centros populacionais. Entre 1347 e 1350, quase metade da população do mundo conhecido pereceu. Nada antes ou depois disso, nenhum terremoto, guerra ou arma de destruição em massa jamais causou tamanha mortalidade.
The ultimate enemy are microbes. And man has no reason to think that because of his superior intellect, if it really came down to a battle, he would necessarily win.
Surpreendentemente, o micróbio causador da peste bubônica ainda existe. Ele está na Arábia Saudita, na África do Norte e do Sul, na América do Sul e nos Estados Unidos. Em 1900, o micróbio pegou carona em navios mercantes na China. Foi para a Califórnia, gerando um surto de peste bubônica nos Estados Unidos. Da costa oeste, ele viajou por terra, onde encontrou uma nova população fértil de hospedeiros, as comunidades de roedores dos desertos americanos.
It's in the southwestern part of the United States, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, California, some in Texas, Arizona. It's mainly in ground squirrels, chipmunks, prairie dogs, small rodent animals. It can infect other animals, and particularly cats.
Cats, like humans, are very, very susceptible to plague, and they can develop plague pneumonia with cough, and they can spread the disease then to people. If the pet owner is handling the cat, has the cat up in their face, and the cat's coughing, they can get what we call primary pneumonic plague, which is acquired by inhaling the bacteria.
Quando a peste negra assolou a humanidade no século XIV, o único tratamento efetivo era um milagre. Hoje em dia, antibióticos podem curar a peste bubônica, se diagnosticada cedo.
We're going to immediately tracing contacts, looking for whoever might have been in contact with this person might have been exposed. And then quite often these people get prophylactic antibiotics to make sure the disease doesn't spread.
Yersinia pestis, o micróbio causador da peste bubônica, é bem conhecido e compreendido. O que preocupa os especialistas em enfermidades são os assassinos microscópicos desconhecidos. Doenças capazes de emergir e se difundir entre as populações modernas.
Things entering the food chain, things changing hosts that you never dreamed would change hosts. Things appearing in unlikely areas.
AIDS, SARS, febre do Vale e doença de Lyme, todos surgem em populações modernas, simplesmente porque as coisas mudam. Dá-se uma oportunidade aos micróbios e eles a aproveitam.
Lyme disease really was let loose because suburban forests in the Northeast were being cleared for suburban sprawl. So it's the same phenomenon. I mean, we're doing that today. We don't know what agents we're going to let loose.
What if Ebola virus established a new home in the East Coast of the United States? That could be pretty awful. It's untreatable. It's unfortunately spread from patients to caretakers. It's the family taking care of them, the doctors, the nurses that come down with that disease. And it's a very frightening disease in that respect.
Na época medieval, a peste negra veio de uma área remota e então se espalhou por rotas comerciais pelo mundo civilizado com incrível rapidez. Os micróbios podem viajar hoje para muito mais longe, muito mais rápido.
When you think of the 24-hour period of travel, you realize that any virus in the world, anywhere, can be right here in this living room within one incubation period. It doesn't have to transmit to anybody, it doesn't have to go through a fleet, it doesn't have to do anything.
Looking at the plague, there are a couple of things that jump out that parallel our situation. You have the notion of an expanding economy, new trade routes.
You realize that 500 million people every year cross international borders on international airline flights. 500 million a year. 70 million work outside their own country. I mean, the numbers are just staggering of the amount of movement, the speed of that movement, and the density of the humans. Put that together, it's a sentiment.
Obstruídos pela religião e pela superstição, cientistas medievais como Guy de Chauliac estavam despreparados para a peste negra. Os especialistas temem que, confrontada com uma epidemia catastrófica, a ciência moderna será igualmente apanhada de surpresa.
If you took something like the plague of the 14th century, where people are dying in their homes, in the streets, and all over the place, I'm not sure we'd handle it. I hope we'd handle it better, but I'm not sure we'd handle it terribly much better than the people of the medieval period did. We don't have a lot of redundancy in the system. We don't have surge capacity, as they call it. If something goes wrong, you know, the capacity is not there to really handle it.
There's absolutely no way that organised health systems could cope with an epidemic of the proportions of the Black Plague.
No final, a história só pode nos contar o que veio antes. Terror e violência. Heroísmo e abnegação. Restauração e renovação. Esses são os legados da peste negra.
The plague is a kind of mirror in which we can actually see how a society coped with a clear medical human disaster.
Quando esse espelho reflete nossa época, a visão é nebulosa e inquietante. Pois o pior inimigo do homem está solto em algum lugar, não menos mortífero do que há 650 anos. Que ele despertará é certo. Se estaremos prontos, o futuro dirá.